nothing to it. Go ahead and bring the light on. Ain't no giant, I ain't gon' fire on. Catch a fade, you I'm warm, I'm gone. Y'all can catch the wave that I am on. I am icon, y'all are wide wrong. Think that I'm a reconcile bonds. Here ain't nothing to it though. This is on me, ain't got much to do with who you know. Keeping it true to from 10 L's into a milli though. But they already knew that those farewell to your opinions. Know that he is so. This is all me, ain't got much to do with who you know. Yeah, keeping it true to form, but they already knew that, though. Here we go.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another special playoff edition of the Saturday Pigskin on a Monday night. We're on the way. We've got Bulldogs and Tigers and Cubs, oh my, and so much more. My name is Brian Skowronski. I got a couple of friends back with me per always. Erik Will in the house from WMAN, along with from the Richland source, Curt Conrad, two stars in their own right, and we're going to break things down for you, all the happenings in North Central Ohio and beyond that took place on the gridiron this weekend. Fellas, what have you learned from 2 weeks of playoff football in these crazy COVID times where everyone's in? What do you know?
It is, this weekend would be the start of the playoffs. I mean,
Sure.
Each region is down to 8 now. So, I mean, the first 2 weeks there were a lot of one-sided games. I think that's all going to go away now, and things are going to get real tight real quick. And that's more exciting, I think, than going to watch 42-14.
Yeah, I agree with Curt a lot as far as you're going to start seeing a little bit less of the discrepancy of scores. It's competitive football from here on out. Now you're going to be looking at teams with positive winning records. You're going to be looking at conference champions battling it out. You know, I know you've got a big one you're covering this week with Bellevue. How about the SBC Lake Division? MOAC's kind of wiped out other than Shelby.
Right.
You know, we got Lucas here for the small schools. So a big one for Ashland this week. That game to me is probably the most intriguing local game that we have as far as just Norwalk, Ashland, two big schools battling it out. You know, I'm excited to see Lucas this week because I haven't seen him in a while. And, you know, they had a nice win last week, and I want to see him, you know, this week again against a foe that I've never seen myself, Independence, and see if they can continue that role in the playoffs.
Yeah, Lucas has played 2 Division 7 opponents this year, one in the regular season, one in the playoffs. I think it's, about 80-0 in those 2 games. So there's something to be said about playing up 3 divisions in the MOSC this year for those guys.
Yeah, Coach Spittler told me when he broke down the tape this week, it just seemed kind of slow for him, the fact that he's been playing up so much. So the Cubs are advancing. We'll show you how they got into round 3 along with many other teams. 10 games coming your way right now. Highlights on the run back. We begin at Chet Looney Stadium, where it was a tough start for the number 2 East Knox Bulldogs. Peyton Lester picked off on the tip pass in the end zone. Avery Wangden is going to take it all the way back inside the 1. He would get tripped up. Toronto would lead this thing 6-0, actually all the way at the half, fellas. Let's take it to the third quarter now, where Weston Mielik going to truck his way in from 3 yards out. We're all tied up at 6 apiece. The Bulldogs would later take the lead for good in the 4th on this jet sweep by Shane Knepp. EK would close out the dub on Cole DeLauder's 1-yard scoring run. 20-6, Bulldogs advance.
You know, I think there's something to be said about teams that have had a first-round bye. That's the first time that's happened, right? So I think it's going to take teams a little bit to knock the rust off, and I think this was a perfect example.
Big one coming up against Shadyside.
OCC rivals now squaring off for the second time this season, and a heads-up play by Ashland picking up the Mansfield senior fumble. The Arrows would cash in the turnover for points. Declan Rohr to Ethan Hartley for a 41-yard strike, and it's going to be 7-0 Arrows. As we bring you now to the second quarter in the Duke Reese. The freshman quarterback is going to find Miles Bradley to even things up. It's 7-all, but Ashland would go on a tear from there, scoring the next 28 consecutive points. And how about this go-ahead run by Rohr? Landon McFrederick would later catch a touchdown. He had 2 in the game. It was 35-22. Ashland knocks off the defending regional champs.
Hey, 35 points against that defense is a feat. So to me, the Arrows will put up points this week against Norwalk. But for Mansfield Senior to put up 22 points, I'm impressed with that with a freshman quarterback.
Speaking of defending regional champs, how about the Lucas Cubs playing at Bob Wine Field for the first time all season? First quarter, the Goose gets loose. Ethan Wallace from 21 yards out, and that puts them up. And just before the break, in my opinion, this was the biggest play of the game. Connor Harper off the misdirection. He's going to take it 57 yards down the near sideline to make it a 2-score edge at the half. And like they do to everybody, the Cubs just wear you out, fellas. Slick run right here by Ethan Sauter for the score. Cubs would advance 35-zip.
A 2-score game or a 2-score lead for Lucas that's a big thing to overcome. Is the way they eat up clock. Again, that's a team they played in the regional championship last year. It was a lot closer last year than this year.
Plymouth on the road trying to upset number 4 Dalton, and this was a physical ground and pound style of game, but the Bulldogs played their style just a little bit better, holding the Big Red offense in check basically all night. They barely even crossed midfield in this matchup. Meanwhile, the Dogs, they're back. Tate Geyser had a solid game, accounting for all 3 touchdowns as Dalton wins 21-0.
Plymouth runs the same offense as Lucas does, and just like if they're ahead by 2 scores, it's hard to overcome. If you get behind by 2 scores with that offense, it is hard to recover from.
Old OCC rivals here in a regular season matchup going head-to-head. Lex has barely scored all year, but somehow, someway, they were coming up with big offensive plays. How about Brandon Forup trucking through the defender and cruises 81 yards for the score? They were on top 24-0, fellas, and you thought the Colts would just lay over and die. Oh no. Mr. Everything, Brady Tedrow, would lead Clear Fork all the way back and complete this game winner with just 1 second to go to Jack Harris from 7 yards out. 29-27. They stun Lexington on the final play. Back to postseason action now. Ontario at Kenton Wildcats. Jacob Eversole. That dude had a huge first half. 3 touchdowns for the senior, including this 1-yard dash into the end zone. The Warriors would respond though. Ethan Snyder coming up here is going to find Jalen Scott, who pretty much does the rest. This kid does not skip leg day ever. 3 missed tacklers later, he's in. It was 7-7, but the biggest play of the game, in my opinion, coming up right here, 4th and long. And they roll the dice, and it works out. Eversole back into the end zone for the dagger. Kenton led 26-7 at the half. Ontario would trim the gap down to 6. They had their chances, but Kenton once again converts a huge 4th down score, and they win it, Curt, 32-20.
Yeah, you and I were both there. Jacob Eversole they use him a lot of different ways as their Wildcat quarterback and as a receiver. If you got a big gun, I guess you shoot it just as often as you can.
Cress Huat carry for the right to play top-seeded Archball. The Blue Devils had not allowed any points at home all season. They got off to a hot start. Ian Yeater there hauling in the TD grab as Devils QB Derek Lonsway had a night. But it helps when your wideouts are making plays like this, guys. Hayden Nash going airborne for the big catch and run. Carey would later punch in the score. Cougars trailed by 28, but they come up with this strip sack. They would cash it in for 6. It was a 2-score game, but just too much carry in this one. Devils roll 42-14. You surprised, Erik?
Yeah, a little bit surprised. I actually thought the Cougars early on, I would have picked them in this game. I think I did last week, actually, but I think you're seeing the depth of that N10, man. That's a heck of a conference right there.
Rossford at Shelby. Whippets bombing on the Dogs early. Andre Hill gets in for the score, but Rossford, I don't think they got the memo that this was supposed to be a blowout victory. This TD catch made it 10-7 in favor of the Dogs, but 25 of the final 28 points all belong to the Whippets. Owen Fisher tasted pay dirt twice. Caleb Baker put the topper on the cake with a huge fumble recovery in the end zone. Whippets are going to move on 32-13.
I'll tell you what, this game was close, and it was a character game because they hadn't been challenged like this for quite a while. And for Shelby to be able to lean on Owen Fisher and that offensive line down the stretch was huge. But I'll tell you what, Shelby's defense is really, really good.
Let's keep it in D4 Region 14. Galleon looking to upset Bellevue, but Mason Miller, he ain't about to let that happen on his watch. 95 yards on the kickoff return after a Tigers field goal. And then Wilson Frankhouse answers on the Tigers' next possession. It's just a 3-point deficit for Galleon at the half, but just too much Keegan Ray. He had nearly 300 all-purpose yards and a pair of touchdown runs. Erik, what's the only thing harder to stop than one, Ray?
2 Rays.
How about 2 Rays? This is Max right here. He's going to get gone for 6. And Bellevue, they got reservations for the quarterfinals, 34-9.
Hey, it's Bellevue, right? Ed Nassani's one of the best in the business. And here's the thing about it. How many Rays can you possibly have in a community? I know that they have the Ray trucking there, but I'm serious. Like, I feel like every 2 to 3 years there's a dominating, young man named Ray.
Came back rivals Cardington, Lincoln, and Danville, and this dude, number 45, Caden Kalupi, was unreal. Video game-like numbers for him. Gives the Danville the early lead. The Pirates, they would try to get back in it. That touchdown grab cut it down to just a couple scores, but just too much Kalupi. And please note that huge block right there to open up the screenplay as Caden gallops for an easy score. He had 4 total touchdowns. Danville dominates. 42-20 your final.
It's a rematch of a regular season game that Danville had won too. That one was a little bit closer, I think. It's hard to play a team twice in the same year, Coach.
Right.
Other scores of note from around the area. West Holmes, a number 12 seed. We all liked them to win. They took down number 5 Cloverleaf 38-21. Colonel Crawford over Seneca East 44-6, so they complete the total sweep of the N10, outright champs. And number 18 Loudonville upsets number 2 Centerburg in a thrilling barn burner 42-41. So the Birds, somehow they're 1-5 in the regular season, 2-0 now in the postseason. And then Winford over Indian Lake 15-2, 14th trip into the postseason for the Royals since 2000. Thanks Curt Conrad for that stat. And then Andover beat Hillsdale 18-8. All right, boys, out of any of those games, the ones that we had moving pictures for, or just the ones that you heard the score, what was the biggest surprise to you? We'll let you go first.
Well, I don't want to say surprise, but I was really happy to see West Holmes play the way we all know they can play. And I'm excited for their matchup in the next round, but I will take a look at Colonel Crawford. I think that this team this year is built to potentially, I think they're at least a regional final team, and I think they might actually have the juice, the sauce, whatever the special stuff is over there. Coach Teklevik's got it because I really think that they have a strong possibility to get to that Final Four.
And I don't know that anything that Lucas and Scott Spittler does is a surprise anymore, but to handle a team that made it to the regional championship game last year the way they did, and granted, I know Cuyahoga Heights lost a lot of guys off that team. That's a really proud program, and to get there and to do it the way they did it, that's saying something. I mean, they're going to be a handful for anyone in Division 7.
I think you got to give it up to Loudonville, man. The fact that they went down to Centerburg and they put that many points on the number 2 seed, I thought that was pretty special. And then Crestview, I mean, they kind of let me down just a little bit. I seen 3 of their home games in person. I really liked them and what they were bringing to the table. To go on the road and get smacked around like that was probably the biggest surprise of me from the weekend.
I tell you, well, and Brian, going with what your original question is, I don't think you can argue that it wouldn't be Loudonville.
Sure.
I mean, that is an impressive win that they have. And now they get the long drive, baby. So they're probably going to have to get the frequent flyer mileage out.
Doing some research this afternoon, I think as an 18 seed, I think they are certainly the lowest seed to advance in Division 6, and I think there's a 22 seed in a higher division, but they're the second lowest seed to advance to the 3rd round in the entire state. Coal Grove is closer to parts of Virginia than it is to Loudonville. It's 3 hours and 20 minutes here. They might be better off chartering a flight, but I suspect that Kevin Knockdurch is going to go down there and have his guys ready to go.
Yeah, so Loudonville, we really wanted to send a camera crew out there to get some highlights, but man, 10-hour round trip, I just don't know if we're going to make it. We'll see. What maybe impressed you guys the most? Which team really stood out that you were like, dang, that they put it on them?
Well, I think Ashland scoring a bunch of points on a really good Mansfield senior defense was a little bit of a surprise. I mean, when they played in the regular season, that was a 13-6 game. I suspected it was going to be a low-scoring affair, and I thought a low-scoring affair certainly favored Mansfield Senior, but Declan Rohr and his guys came out and kind of hung one on the Tigers. Yeah,
for me, it's Clyde. That game surprised me. I think they were the 13 seed,
right?
Maybe it was something like that.
11, actually.
11 seed, yeah, thank you. It was 11-4, I believe. I think that was the matchup, and they're the reigning state or Division 4 state champion, but man, what a league at 3-3, and then for them to come out and really from start to finish control that game. Final score might have been 31-20. I think it was in that ballpark, right. But I just really like what they have going on there, and I think that might be a team you don't want to play. They've got an awesome matchup this week. Once again, talking about kind of just outside of our footprint, but Clyde and Huron, man, right. That's going to be a big one. And the winner of that is probably going to get the Whippets.
And Clyde won a state championship as a number 8 seed.
That's
last
right.
year. So there's no
Right.
reason to think that
Right.
they're thinking, oh, we're an 11 seed. We might as well pack it up and go home.
Well, as a matter of fact, they weren't even in. I think it was something to go. What was it? Was it Clear Fork? Maybe lost week
Right.
week
Right.
10. I think, which even allowed them to bump
Yeah,
in.
kind of
So-
leapfrog in.
by a fraction of a point, then they get in and go win the whole thing. I mean, it is absolutely crazy. That might have been one of the craziest things I've witnessed since we've seen the 18 playoff.
Right. And that state championship game, I'm not sure who it was against, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was of all the games that weekend, that was the one that was the no doubter. I mean,
Right.
Clyde went
Right.
out there and hung it on a team as a number 8 seed.
It was at Licking Valley
Yeah.
or something like
That's
that.
who it was.
Yeah.
Who would you guys say is the most talented team that got knocked out of the playoffs that maybe just had a tough draw that you think could have made a really deep run and just ran into a buzzsaw?
There's a lot. I think that I thought the Crestview would maybe make it to the third round of the playoffs this year. I thought that this was their year. They had a lot of guys coming back.
I'm with you.
And I have always been a big Ross Kuhn guy. I was a little surprised, and not just that they got beat, but that they got beat that the way they did was a little bit of a surprise for me.
Yeah, that's a great question. I really thought Ontario was going to beat Kenton. I really did. I thought that they were going to beat them. I thought that they had the talents and the athlete to match up. I really wanted to see that next round matchup as well. That for me, that's the big one as far as athletes go. That's a great question because I think I'm with you. I think there's a lot of them. I think Crestview's got to be in that conversation as well. The season they had, the type of players they have, and I think they have a lot coming back. I mean, that's going to be a scary team next year as well.
Yeah, those were the two teams that I wrote down.
Right.
Ontario, getting to watch them in person for the first time.
Right.
I just think it was too bad that they had all the turnovers because Ethan Snyder, he was a big reason why they lost, but he was also a big reason why they were still in the game at the end. So, they got dudes all over. The one kid that plays defensive line, Big John, had many big plays, knocked down about 4 or 5 passes. I really like the Warriors, so I think that's cool. They're going to play Clear Fork this next week at the Corral. So the fact that you can still do these regular season games is pretty fun.
And I was talking to Chris Miller after the game, and it's a weird year. Usually if you lose in the second round of the playoffs, it's over and done with. And I said, well, you guys have a lot to be proud of. And he said, oh, we still got a lot to play for right now. He said, we're not done yet, and we're not going to have any trouble getting up for Lex.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's normally their traditional week one opponent. I mean, that's that I think both schools will be up for that game.
Sure.
And if you're going to be at a non-playoff game, that's a good one to start with. But, I also feel for Ontario because, man, this was the year they were striking lightning here in that bottle because I believe 21 of their 22 starters are seniors.
Right.
And
Sure.
Snyder had played his fanny off, man. He was a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got to cover him one game, but then just being able to see the highlights and see the stats and he was a first-team all-league caliber player. I think he's got to be in the conversation
Absolutely.
for MOAC Player of the Year.
He led in every category.
Yeah, he led in every category. And I think that there's going to be some great conversation with him and Owen Fisher and some of those other guys. I think that's a that might be the big that might be the big conversation there in that their league meetings. But I love the fact they got the basketball guys out too.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's a trend that we see over there.
Speaking of basketball, guys, Griffin Shaver was up for top play of the week from last week, week 7. We totaled up all the votes just moments ago. Here is your winner from last week. And it's going to be a freshman, Sam Williams-Dixon. Check this out. As he trucks through the Knights at the castle, goes all the way in for the score, and man, I love the description here. Got his tires rotated after the game because this kid was a flat-out Mac.
I'll tell you what. I mean, that looks like Curt Conrad going to the snack bar to get some big league chew.
Yeehaw!
I tell you what, he's a freshman. He doesn't know what he doesn't know. He doesn't know that he's not supposed to be making these plays in the second round of the playoffs.
I'll tell you what. That's probably why that dude's getting ready to play more football this weekend.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to take a quick timeout. We'll be right back with your nominees for Week 8. Stay tuned. Nominee number 1, and it's baby Hercules, Brandon Forup with the truck stick and roll. I mean, you want to talk about a hit and run, boys? I hope he at least traded insurance info after that bulldozing, then shows off the wheels. 81 yards all the way to the zone. Where's this been all year for the Minutemen? This was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was a great play. It looked like an adult, looked like a dad playing with his kid in the backyard.
Zim turns on the afterburners, and he is gone. Our second nominee sees carries Derek Lonsway on the move. Crestview defenders breathing down his neck, but he's still able to slingshot the rock. 35 yards on a dime to Ian Yeater, yeet yeet, for the score. And let's slow it down a bit for my friends watching at home as you observe Derek. Eyes to the sky, and he throws up a prayer, and the sports gods answer for the Devils. Declan roar to Landon McFrederick on our next nominee, and hear me roar, says Declan, on the money to Landon. Tippy toes McFrederick, who gets in just barely, man. What a catch. Actually got both of them, and that's an NFL catch. Beautiful stuff right there.
Yeah, kind of dropping it in the bucket there was Declan Roar.
Play number 4, and it's Griffin Shaver shaving up the defense like a straight razor through some peach fuzz, carving up the secondary on this 52-yard journey where he finds Pater at the end of the rainbow. He showed off all the abilities right here. Check it out. Nice catch, the shiftiness, the strength, and speed. Not bad for a point guard in a helmet, Curt.
Kenton may or may not have been short a cornerback on that play. There's some conflicting reports about that. A kid had gotten hurt, and I don't know that they had someone out there, but nonetheless, it's a great play.
Final nominee takes us to Howard, where it must be your pass because it ain't your face. It's a trip drill. Yeah, it's a tip drill. Shout out to the old school Nelly for the lyrics, and word to Shane Knepp with the one-handed pick. Nice return all the way inside the Toronto red zone, too, and credit Weston Mielik to set it all up with that tip. Good stuff.
Yeah, that takes a lot of concentration there to pull that one off. There's a lot of traffic in there. Great play.
All right, guys, so you can weigh in with your votes. We're going to repost this on the social media. We got the Facebook, the Twitter, the YouTube, and the Instagram. You can jump on there. Tell me who you think made the top play of the week. All right, let's shift gears just a little bit now, and let's check out the top individual performances on your Friday Night Phenoms, brought to you by Spherion, Mid-Ohio. Actually.
Yep.
These look like this. We got 7 of them this week, fellas, the most we've had. How about Declan Roar and the performance that he had, torching a Tigers defense that have been consistently good all season long. 4 total tutties for him, and pretty darn flawless through the air, too.
And they're going to need him again this weekend. The Norwalk team is a good team coming down there. They're going to need all these guys to play at a high level if they're going to move on here to the, 3rd round, I guess? Now, 4th round.
Mm-hmm.
How much of a difference, Erik? You've had some good quarterbacks in the past, a really good one. Does it make when you got your senior guy slinging it like this?
Oh, absolutely. Slinging it with confidence because now your receivers are running the routes a little bit harder. Everybody realizes I'm not just running off because the ball can potentially come to me. And when you're QB in Ashland's offense, you are the BMOC.
Speaking of that, Brady Tedrow has been doing absolutely everything for Clear Fork this season. Once they started figuring out how to properly use him, where they move him all around, under center sometimes, he'll do some wildcat stuff, they'll hand it off to him, he'll line up at wide receiver. Brady Tedrow's everywhere on the field. You have to account for him at all times, and he has been making the most of his senior year.
It kind of reminds me how Kentucky last year used the young man. He's in the NFL now. Doggone, he's from Warren. I can't remember what his last name is. But anyways, this is how they used him. He would throw it sometimes. He would run it sometimes. But he was the best athlete, so they're putting him underneath center. That's how they're using him. And I agree with you, Brian. They're using him the right way.
Jacob Eversaw, you already saw the highlights that he had. He was flawless, man. Every time he touched the ball, he got into the end zone, Curt. He was a big, strong kid. He was a great defensive player as well. But on offense, he really helped seal the deal against the Warriors.
Yeah, absolutely. They would line him up as a wildcat quarterback a little bit when they wanted to run it. And he was a very talented receiver. That long touchdown pass, he just outran some very athletic Ontario defenders. So, if they're going to have some success going forward, it's going to be largely because of him.
And on this 4th down play right here, that 35-yarder where he got into the end zone, I thought that was kind of the tipping point of the game where Kent was able to build a big lead. Ontario couldn't get out of it.
Yeah, I think it was a 4th and 14 play, if memory serves. And, if you're Ontario, that's a backbreaker. You're so close to getting off the field right there, and then it swings completely the other way.
Derek Lonsway, amazing game in all facets right here. Almost 100 yards rushing, but I like just the 3 incompletions, almost 200 passing yards, and the passing score. He was pretty dynamite against a solid Crestview defense.
Yeah, extremely efficient. And Brian, what you're seeing here, we're looking at most of your top players. A lot of them are coming from the quarterback position, and they're running the football as well. And when you have a quarterback that can run, that allows you to win the numbers games because I can get an extra blocker in there as well. So when you're putting these kind of athletes at these schools at quarterback, it gives these defensive coordinators an absolute headache.
Yeah, he's a great athlete. You see that he moves the pocket. He throws a really nice deep ball. And when he does get loose on the perimeter, he's able to shake, bake, rattle, roll, make things happen for that carry offense. How about a freshman making the list here? Cole DeLauder, 23 carries, almost 150 yards, and had a big rushing touchdown for East Knox. He had some big shoes to fill when their senior running back went out for the season. I don't know that they knew that this kid would be able to fill in, step in the shoes as well as he has.
Yeah, I mean, again, freshmen, they don't realize that maybe they're not supposed to be making these kind of plays this deep into the postseason. It's something to watch him and the gentleman from Loudonville doing the exact same thing.
So the Bulldogs would be a big 20-6 winner over Toronto, moving on in the postseason, and number 12 right there was a big reason why he's a nominee this week. Still 2 more nominees on the way, including Tate Geyser of Dalton. Curt, you saw this dude in person. 3 rushing touchdowns. He accounted for every single point in the game, so he was a pretty big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dalton, I think, eventually they just kind of wore down Plymouth, I think, in the second half, and they just kept feeding Tate Geyser. And, the Wayne County Athletic League is known for its toughness, I guess, and I think that eventually it just kind of got the better of a very good Plymouth team. And that, Plymouth was never out of that game. It was close until, even deep into the 4th quarter when Geyser scored his 3rd touchdown. So, he was the real deal.
Final nominee is Caden Kalupi. Video game-like numbers, 4 total touchdowns, over 120 through the air. And when he was getting into the backfield and getting the carries, he was a big difference maker. This kid did everything for them.
Yeah, he's obviously quicker than 2 cats. Look at him. I mean, he's very elusive. Wearing the old Archie Griffin 45 there as well, rocking it out. And they're going to need him to play just like this week coming up, or they may not be able to survive in advance. So this young man needs to carry this momentum forward to get another W.
Yeah, getting into the end zone 4 times, helping carry them past Cardington Lincoln. Kalupi, a flat-out standout for Danville, has been all season, and that's why he is a nominee for our Friday Night Phenom.
Can we just fast forward and see if Danville and East Knox can play another game?
Yeah.
That was a 7-6 game the first time. I don't think anyone would be brokenhearted to see that matchup someplace down the road.
Yeah, that was an awesome game. I was there, awesome environment, and I definitely sign up to see it again. Make sure that you get your vote heard online. As mentioned, I'm going to repost this. You can get in on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know who you think should win. And speaking of winners, how about for Week 7? 5 nominees entered, only 1 could survive and be the winner. Who would that be? Let's find out right now. How about Brady Taylor of West Holmes? And I don't think there was any question about this last week. Every time he touched the football, he scored a touchdown. And granted, it was against a Madison defense that has not had the best of seasons so far. But man, what a special night when you can do almost 200 total yards and 4 touchdowns on 4 touches. Let's go.
Yeah, and they're going to need him again this weekend. I don't think any of us here were surprised that West Holmes is still playing football going into the 4th week of the playoffs now, but or the 3rd week. But yeah, I mean, they're going to need him and all of his buddies.
All right, let's talk about now that the teams that are still remaining. Curt, who do you have the most faith in that's going to potentially advance to like a regional final? Who do you believe in the most?
Two of them. I think Shelby and Lucas. I guess that's not a huge surprise for anyone who's followed football here in North Central Ohio. I think the Whippets had a pretty stiff challenge this past week. That's kind of one of those, and I think there's an argument to be made that maybe a bye is not such a great thing. They had a bye. It took them a while to knock that rust off, but once they got rolling, they got rolling. And I think that here going forward here, they're going to look a little different. And I couldn't be a bigger Nathan Zahner fan. I mean, he made a huge play in that playoff game, that kind of strip sack that resulted in the recovered fumble in the end zone for the touchdown that kind of turned the tide in that game. And I've been a huge fan of that kid all year long.
Right, and for me, I got three teams. I look at Lucas. I've been saying really since the beginning of the year, I felt like Lucas could make a return trip to a state Final Four. Their schedule has prepared them for this, and I think that they get favorable matchups at the Division 7. Here's what I mean by that. If you're going to beat Lucas, you got to be able to throw the football, and there aren't many D7 schools that are out there just playing, air raid football. So I like Lucas. I like them to make a deep run. I really like Colonel Crawford. I've said that earlier tonight, and I really believe that Colonel Crawford's going to have a great. I actually think at minimum it would be a disappointment if they're not in a regional final. I think they've got to get there. And then, like you were saying, Shelby, I think they're complete. What separates Shelby from the teams that I've seen, I think we've covered them 4 or 5 times this year on radio, is their ability to run and pass the ball. They are a very complete offense. And then defensively, their defensive line is going to give you some issues. They're a little bit young in the secondary, but they're gaining more experience. Their linebackers play well, but that's because that defensive line, their defensive line is they can go get after the quarterback. They've got the depth now with Merrick Albert and Xander Wilkins back. Yeah. And like you said, Nathan Zahner is a get-off-the-bus-first guy. That dude passes the look test. I'm just telling you, that's a man. And I really like. I think that they are a very complete team, both sides of the ball. And as long as Marshall Shepard continues to, I don't even want to say manage the game because he can make plays, he can win games. But I love it when they're able to get Owen Fisher going. You get Owen Fisher going, Shelby's going to be more than a tough out.
Yeah, how could you not love the Lucas and Shelby picks? And then Colonel Crawford, too, is not a team that I wrote down. But, man, they're solid at every position. Big, strong, physical kids out there. What about an individual player? Who do you know that you can pretty much take to the bank that this kid's going to show up on Friday or Saturday night and it's just going to ball out?
Ooh, man, I'll tell you what. I love the Sauter kid for Lucas. I love that young man. He flat gets after it. I really love 2 guys for Shelby. I love Owen Fisher because I feel like he can not only hurt you, but he can hurt you in the pass game, and he's an incredible effect on the game defensively. There was a huge play in that game defensively where they ran a quick out, and he ran the out better than the receiver did to break it up. And we've already talked about him. I think Nathan Zahner might be the least talked about great player in this area. I mean, he is absolutely dominating people off that end. And Shelby's doing something kind of cool with him and Merrick. They've been putting them on the same side in pass situations. I mean, imagine trying to deal with Merrick Albert coming from a potential 3 technique and then Zahner coming off the edge or vice versa. That just creates a lot of havoc. You get into a 3rd and long against Shelby and you better have a good screen game because they're gonna get home. They're gonna get to the quarterback.
Quarterbacks, I think quarterback play this time of year is really, really important. Colonel Crawford has a very good quarterback whose name I cannot pronounce. I won't even try. And Winford has a very good quarterback too. I wouldn't be brokenhearted if those 2 teams at some point down the road. I mean, it was a 1-point game, I think, in the regular season. I think that would be an awful fun game to see those 2 teams play with a little bit more on the line someplace down the road here.
I agree with Curt.
And I feel like Marshall Shepard, just from I haven't got to see Shelby in person yet, but he seems like he throws a great deep ball. Pretty much every time he's got a receiver open, he seems to hit him on the film. Right. He doesn't turn it over that much. I think that's a guy that you can really rely on, and it helps having Owen Fisher in the backfield. Definitely that 1-2 punch.
Right. Well, and I call them the Fantastic Four. I mean, those 4 wide receivers that they roll out are unbelievable. Legit. So you've got a solid offensive line. You've got I think ran for another 180 this week, and Owen Fisher's probably approaching 1,300 yards in 7 games. So, you start throwing that in there, and then Marshall Shepard's ability to run and throw the ball. You're exactly right. He's very efficient. I think on the year, he's right around 64% completion. I mean,
Sure.
I'll be honest with you, even with I can't think of a season Brennan was even 64%. He was normally in the high 50s, low 60s. So that's the efficiency that Marshall Shepard's playing with.
Yeah, and to have a stable full of receivers that he has, I mean, man, you can't. He's got the best job in all of North Central Ohio. I would think you can't go wrong wherever you go.
Right. Yeah, and Rob Mahaney knows he knows exactly the buttons to push to get that offense going, and that's why I think that they're going to be such a tough out, because even if there have been games where Owen Fisher has been slowed down.
Right.
I mean, there's no doubt. Ontario kept them to 60-some yards. I think it might have been in River Valley. If it wasn't River Valley, it was somebody around, and it might have even been Lucas kept them under 100 yards. But then Marshall Shepard goes out and throws for 230. So when you have the ability to do that, that allows you to extend your season. As soon as somebody can make you one-dimensional, you become very beatable.
Yeah, and Rob Mahaney's father-in-law, Lee Owens, always tells me, you got to try to make a team play left-handed. I don't know what left-handed looks like for Shelby. I mean, you take away Owen Fisher, then you got to deal with 4 great receivers. You take away the passing game, then there's a kid with 1,300 yards in 8 games. So good luck with that.
Lots of great games on the schedule for this weekend. I'm going to tell you, you can only pick one. I'm only going to give you one ticket. You can only go to one football game. I guess Erik's really dazed and confused over here. He doesn't like the question. I'll let you go first, Curt. Where are you going?
It's the game I'm going to Friday night. It's Norwalk at Ashland. I think it's, that's Division III, Region 10, a quarterfinal game. I think it's going to be a great game. I'm really looking forward to it. Ashland did a lot of good things against Mansfield Senior. To score that many points on a stout senior high defense is saying something. Norwalk is, the conference that they play in, the division of the SBC that they play in, there's nothing tougher in North Central Ohio as far as I'm concerned. So they're going to come in battle tested, and it's going to be an awful lot of fun.
Now, can I have a Friday-Saturday game? Come on, that's 2 different tickets on 2 different nights. I'm picking the Norwalk-Ashland game as well. That game is going to be awesome. Like, those are 2. I want to see the OCC best against one of the best SBC lakes. I'm really excited to see that matchup. And then I've got to slip in that Clyde and Huron game. I've got to slip that in there. I think that is going to be a whale of a ball game.
All right, for me, for here in the area, I'm going to save my ticket for Saturday night. I want to see Colonel Crawford if they are the real deal. This is probably going to be the first test that they've had in a while, taking on Liberty Center. The N10, it's them in Winford, so they haven't really been tested. I want to say we've been giving them love all season. Right. I feel like we think that they're a good team. We'll find out on Saturday night, so that's why I'm going to punch my ticket and go check it out. All right, gentlemen, thanks for joining as always. Great stuff, and thank you all for watching out there online on YouTube and Facebook. We'll be right back here next Monday night for the next playoff edition of the Pigskin. So long for now.